Mr. Chair.
I call the Honourable Judith Collins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, it's a pleasure to be able to take a call in this matter, and I would like to acknowledge my ministerial colleagues and involved in the area, particularly Amy Adams, and also the Chair of the Law and Order Select Committee, Kamal Singh Bakshi, and the J&E, Justice and Electoral Committee Chair, Jackie Dean, and all of the members of those committees. I know that they're all very hard-working committees. I'm particularly pleased that Law and Order is also helping us come up with some solutions, hopefully cross-party solutions, around some of the issues around gun crimes and the increasing use of guns, particularly by gang members and serious violent offenders. So it's one of those things where it's good to see a committee working so hard and to come up with something hopefully very sensible. And the public does welcome that sort of contribution from us. Can I say that it's great to be back in the justice sector, and it's particularly great to be able to say that one of our big four priorities when we first came into government was around reducing crime. One of the first things we did was to bring in 600 extra frontline police into New Zealand Police. It made a huge difference, particularly the 300 into the county's Manukau or South Auckland Policing District. What we've seen is a reduction in the crime rate. We sought to reduce it by 20%, violent crime by 20%, and youth crime by 25% by 2017. We've exceeded two of those targets. Since the base period of June 2011, the recorded crime rate has fallen 16%, violent crime has fallen 8%, and youth crime by 38%. There are 52,448 fewer crimes now since that time. This is a huge improvement, and in addition to that, we can always look to do better as well. So I think one of the things that's been very helpful is the use of technology, particularly in police, around the use of smartphones, first off iPads and smartphones, and actually being able to access information about offenders, to be able to input information as they're at the jobs, not afterwards. And I saw very recently a very good innovation with the smartphones, the police being able to record with a victim's consent, a victim of family violence's statement at her own home, immediately following the police arriving at the house and finding out what has happened. This saves the victim so much effort of having to leave a home, often with children in it, going into a police station, which after all she hasn't done anything wrong, and actually also helps to prevent the offenders and family members getting to or trying to stop the victim from continuing to give evidence. So this is something which is being trialled in Palmerston North. I've been really thrilled to see that that seems to be making a real difference already, particularly for victims who are then spared this very difficult and tortuous process of having to give a written statement to a police officer, often in times of deep distress. And one of the good things with this process is that police are looking at the technologies that they have, thinking about different ways of using it. And when we often look at some of these really good innovations, it's not rocket science, but actually it doesn't happen unless we have the technology available, unless we have an attitude that says actually police officers can come up with great ideas, let's trial them out. If it works, let's help them. Because family violence is one of our big frontiers when it comes to dealing with crime. We have 41% of police frontline staff time is spent on family violence issues. It's around about 20% of all police work. It is far too high, and at least in this country, like Australia, we do actually acknowledge that it occurs and that it is a very serious problem. But frankly, we need to do a lot better, and that's why the Minister of Justice and myself and other ministers, 17 of us, are involved in cross-government work on this area. It is something that should be concerning to us all. In addition to that, in corrections, I can say I'm very pleased with some of the work that's been going on in corrections. I know that the House will be thrilled to know that Serco paid us $8 million yesterday. So much better to actually get the money than to say it's coming. And guess what? The cheque wasn't just in the mail, it was there. So that was great. Also, we're seeing some really good work going on in rehabilitation, particularly drug and alcohol treatment, and really pleased to see that we've been able to, in the first, Mr. Chair, in the first, Mr. Chair, thank you, Mr. Chair, in the first term in office, to be able to double the number of prisoners who can access drug and alcohol treatment from the measly 500 that we inherited to 1,000, and now that's going to be growing by up to 4,000, hopefully starting next year. So we're going to put a big effort into that. There's a lot going on in our prisons too around working prisons, so that all of our prisons are becoming working prisons. I know that all Kiwis will join with me in a sort of silent cheer when I tell you that some prison directors who have come from overseas, okay, it is the UK, have come and said to me things like, in New Zealand, prisoners want to work, and that is apparently unusual. Not in New Zealand, our prisoners want to work, and I was actually really proud of them when they said that. I thought, good, our Kiwis. Well, okay, some of them are very bad behaved, but you know, they want to work, so that's a good thing. And they see work as actually a benefit to them, and of course it gives them skills that they wouldn't have otherwise. This is an area where just recently I was in Rolleston Prison in Canterbury and saw some of the 34th house that Corrections has rebuilt from, in some cases, very damaged properties to housing corp houses, and it was being trucked out the gate off to its new home and the new tenants in it. Now that's the sort of work that I think New Zealanders want to see our prisoners doing, learning new skills, getting a great outcome, helping other people who are actually, in some cases, worse off than themselves. So I hear that that is very well received. We often hear quite a lot about the prison population in New Zealand. I'm often hearing it quoted that it's the second highest in the world. Well, that is, of course, complete rubbish. What it is we rank 7th in the world in imprisonment rates. That's 7th in the OECD and 72nd in the world. We are nowhere near second in the world. What we would be great is if we had fewer people in our prisons, but while they continue to commit violent crimes, where they continue not to be safe on remand, then they will continue to be sent to prison. And when they are, then I'll be happy to help house them, because we have had to deal with that, and I think that that's probably a good thing that we've been prepared to do that. It's not a good thing that they're committing crime in the first place. There are lots of things too that we could do further in this portfolio, and I'm really pleased that Corrections have agreed with me, and I've agreed with them, that mental health is one of the areas that we need to do better in our prisons. So the House can expect that you're going to be hearing more on that. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to work out that in the late 80s, early 90s, when essentially modern Western countries decided to empty out the mental institutions, we actually ended up filling up the prisons instead. And that shouldn't have been a surprise to anyone, really, but that's what happened. I'm not saying let's go back to those days, because actually mental institutions, these patients did not have the same rights that people in our prisons do. I think it was a pretty horrendous situation for many people. But do we need more beds for those forensic patients? Yes, obviously we do. But unfortunately, it's the sort of thing where in some cases prison is going to be the safest place. We're working on something right now at Auckland Prison at Palermo, where there is a very secure unit being built, and it is in fact going to be able to house and to treat prisoners with mental health issues that do not pass that threshold where they need to go to the Mason Clinic, but are very serious behaviours, and including self-harms and harming others. So I'm very pleased about that. I also want to see more work in corrections, and Corrections certainly agrees they want to see it more in making sure the out-of-gate care is better as prisoners leave prison, because actually we just don't want to see them back again. And there has been a huge improvement in that over the last 7 years, but there needs to be even more in that. And in particular, we could spend all the money that there is, but actually that will not solve the problem until we deal with the issue of gangs and their influence. If you want to look at who reoffends more, it's gang members, twice as likely to reoffend the non-gang members, twice as likely to be in prison for serious violent offences and methamphetamine selling. So these are the sorts of situations we're dealing with. This is not just corrections problem, it's not just police problem, not just justice. basically the way I see it, when families fail, child, youth and family and the social welfare system comes in. When that fails, so does the justice system.
The Honourable Phil Goff.